Good evening, everybody. We're back for our SHAC meetings, starting off the new year with our first SHAC meeting of the year. So thank you guys for joining us, and want to make sure that we are able to have enough time as this meeting and the next couple will really be digging into some of the recommendations that we plan on making and having those conversations. Let's see. Let me first just go through, and I don't have our roster in front of us, but for our meeting notes, I just want to make sure that I note who all we have here with us today. So I will call everybody's name who's present, both administration and SHAC members. And if I did not call your name, please just let me know if I missed you somehow. I just want to make sure we take an accurate record. I'm just going to go across my screen and announce everybody's name who I see here today. We have Ryan Smith, we have myself, Aurora Martinez-Jones, Leslie Winters, Hillary Setterquest, Laura Darden, Dr. LaShondra Lewis, Michelle Andrew, Brandy Hafner, Dr. Monica Faulkner, Kathy Irwin, Kelly Darby, Gina Norton, Sharon Wilkes, Michael Oda, Becky Laswell, Yana Koleva, Denise Ray, Emily O'Neill, Niana Dunn, Dr. Jennifer Faulkner, Robin, Katie Kirish, and Kalia Thompson, and I see Amy Usulman. Did anybody not hear their name announced? Okay. So then welcome, and I'm very excited for us to get our good SHAC work done. Oh, I think we have somebody else. We have Marlo in the waiting room. So just for our notes, we have Marlo as well. I hope you all were able to receive a copy of the minutes from November the 16th. Our secretary, do we have our secretary? Yes, do you want to present those minutes?
Was it going to be me or Kelly? I thought, because Kelly, you did the minutes last time.
Either way, whoever wants to present them, can present them.
I don't know exactly how to present minutes.
Just
but
see if there's any corrections or updates that we need.
And I have an update too. So,
okay.
Yeah, so the meetings, it looks like, Ami, I think maybe you posted the minutes in the chat. Is that right?
Looks like they're there.
Yes, I forgot, because I did prepare the minutes. I forgot to include a link to the presentation that Dr. Grosso gave, and was wondering if somebody has that link and we can update the minutes. And then I think that's really the only thing, unless I spoke with her further down in the minutes. I wrote when she was talking about the 4 additional social workers that were going to be added to the staff. I'm not sure if I was as clear as I could have been about that just one of those social workers was going to be dedicated to staff needs, and then the other 4 weren't, the other 3 were not. So if we wanted to make a clarification about that, we could.
Okay. So first, Ryan, do we know if we can get a link to Dr. Grosso's presentation?
Oh yeah, we can definitely. I might not have it right here with me, but we can definitely get that. And
okay.
Share it. Yeah.
And so then, and then you said you wanted just to make that adjustment, Kelly, that the one staff is going to be dedicated.
Yeah, maybe just for clarification, it's that one staff is going to be dedicated to, one social worker is going to be dedicated just specifically, exclusively for staff. And then there's going to be 3 other social workers, 2 are crisis social workers and 1 is staff.
Okay. And did anybody else know any corrections?
No. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
There's just 3 new positions, it looks like. 3 new social workers, 2 are crisis, and 1 is staff. Apologies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that detailed correction plus the link to Dr. Grosso's presentation, did anybody else identify any updates or corrections to the minutes? All right. Do we have a motion?
A couple of typos. I'll put them in the chat.
Okay. And then we've got a couple of typos. All right, so then with adding the link to Dr. Gross's presentation, the details on the social workers, and then the typo corrections, is there a motion to approve the minutes with those updates?
I'll motion to
Motion.
approve the minutes with those.
Second.
I'll
All right,
second that.
Okay, so we've got our motion, we've got a second. All those in favor, just wave your hand up or say aye.
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 All right, anybody opposed to accepting the minutes with those changes? All right, we have them approved with those changes as identified. All right, so then next, before we started talking about committee work, I thought it'd be great just to get some updates on transitions back to school, considering all that's going on here in the new year. So let me turn it over to you, Ryan.
Sure, thank you. And we've got Sharon Wilkes and Brandy Hafner here on the call for this part of the meeting as well, just to answer questions and clarify anything that I might get incorrect as well. But as everybody knows, it's been definitely a hectic return in January due to the number of staff and students, and not only just campus staff, but central office, transportation, food services, staff that have had to be out for a period of time. I can say that in talking with Dr. Presley this morning and listening to how he shared with the PTA council meeting today as well, that we're definitely getting through it as a district. We're getting everything covered. It's not ideal in all situations, but classes are getting covered. Students are getting what they need. We've been getting some questions about, how we're able to do this while some other districts are having to close for a few days, like Hutto, we've probably heard about them, Marble Falls. Essentially, we're a larger district and we have more staff and personnel that can chip in on campuses to help cover when teachers are out. For example, we stood up a dashboard that first week for central office employees that are out covering classes. So principals essentially can go to the dashboard, see which days different central office staff are available, and reach out to them to cover classes. So I know most of us on the call have been covering. I know Dr. Darden, Dr. Lewis have been in classes. I taught 8th grade ELA last week, and tomorrow I'm teaching 5th grade at Terra Vista. So we're all out, and Gina Norton, I know you've been out there on campuses as well. Sorry if I missed anybody. Amy, I know you're there, Sharon, on campuses. So that's definitely not filling every need, but it's making it more manageable. I will say too, I think we had about 600 staff out today. That sounds like a very large number, but we do have about, I think it's like 6,500 to 7,000 total staff members. So it's a large number, but we're a big organization as well. So we're able to fill in for one another as needed. What else? Some other updates you might have heard about, some classroom closures. So we have had a few classes that have had to go to, we call it remote conferencing. That's a TEA term, when an entire class might go home to learn for a period of days, and they'll receive remote or virtual instruction during that period of time. So usually that's when a certain number of students in a class potentially are testing positive. So then that entire class goes home. I want to say no more than 5 that's happened with so far this semester. And that happened a few times in the first semester as well. So that's not something new. It's just something that's continuing to something that we're working through and dealing with. As far as on campus, pretty much the same types of procedures and mitigation strategies that were in place prior to the winter break are still in place currently. We've got teams that are monitoring all of that to see where we might need adjustments and things like that moving forward. But definitely we've seen some periodic disruptions as teachers have had to move around to cover classes. And one thing that we did implement this semester as well is teachers are now being compensated for when they have to cover another teacher's class who's not there. That's occurring both elementary and secondary. So if, for example, a teacher has, like typically on a secondary campus, you'll have a planning period where that's kind of your time to plan for yourself. Then you also have a professional learning community period where you're planning with a team. And if you are willing to give up one of those periods to go cover a classroom that's out, you get compensated for that period. Elementary looks a little different. It's usually dispersion of the students, and then a team of teachers that actually share that compensation. So that's something that's been in place since the start of this semester. So that is new as well. But other than that, I know the 600 number today is looking better than it was last week. So that's good news. I know it's only one day, but we're hoping that that's, every trend starts with just one day. So we're hoping that today's the start of something a little better. Like I said, it's been not just campus staff, it's been central office. We've had, quite a few people that are out for a significant period of time. Transportation, is keeping it together, but I'm not going to lie and say it's been easy the last few weeks, but they've been able to hit the routes and do what they need. Yana's on the call. I know that in food services too, and Emily, I know we're making it work, but I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's definitely been a stress on the system since we've been back. But other than that, we're in a good spot, relatively speaking. I think I can speak for all the leadership in the district that thinks we're in a good spot to get through this current wave of the pandemic. And Sharon or Brandy, anything specific that I might have missed that you think we should add? And then after that, I'll talk a little bit about students returning from virtual on campus. But as far as all students back with COVID procedures right now, Sherry or Brandy, anything? Sharon or Brandy?
I think you did a great job of explaining everything, Ryan. It was really good. So, unless there's questions, I don't think there's anything else to add.
I had a quick question. I just wondered if there was a number of students per classroom that needed to be out to shut that classroom down.
We look at the percentage of students. And so it's not a specific number. We look for 30%. And so when you look at total number of kids, plus the adult in the classroom, when you have about 30%, then we figure that it's time to shut the classroom down. This is for elementary and for our self-contained units for special education, because they're in the classes the whole day with the other kids.
Katie, we have a question, and then I see you, Leslie, next.
Yeah, just two, I think, pretty quick ones. So Ryan, that remote conferencing, is that new guidance that was released on the 13th from the TEA? Is that what that designation is under?
I think you mean January 13th?
Yeah, what did I say? Yes.
You said the 13th. Yeah, I think they reiterated it on the 13th, but it was in place before that. It's been in place almost since the beginning of the year. And like I said, we utilized it a few times in the fall, but I think in that TEA call, it just reiterated that was an option.
Gotcha. And then I know you said that teachers are being compensated for additional workloads. Does that also apply to the teacher assistants for the special education classrooms that are picking up bigger caseloads?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I'll have to check on that and get back with you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I know that they're picking up classes too, as they're covering special education a lot.
I will check on that.
Thank you.
All right, Leslie, and then we'll go to Michael. Leslie?
Yes. Are there any reports, or do we know if any of our staff or students are hospitalized during this outbreak?
Brandy, do you want to take that? I'm not aware.
Yes, I've heard of a few cases of folks that are hospitalized, individuals that are hospitalized, but no specifics.
Okay.
Anything else, Leslie?
Oh, no, that was all. Thank you.
Okay, Michael?
Yeah, I had a question that I've heard from a couple of former teacher friends who are still certified, including myself, and how we can help volunteer. We don't want to become subs in the subsystem. We just want to help fill where they're not able to get subs or not having to pull so many administrators. Is there a protocol for that? Or I asked my son's middle school, and he didn't really have an answer. He wasn't sure.
So I can tell you what I've heard of so far. So as I understand, I can understand that you don't want to sub for everywhere or everyone, but I believe you still have to be in the subsystem, because that checks for, fingerprint stuff and all the things that you would already have in place as a teacher, Michael, Mr. Oda, I should say. And that it definitely would be something that we would want to do as much as we can to facilitate a super quick process to get you in place, because we have such a great need. But I think there are some things that legally we'd be required to ask of you. And I think that's the reason why we ask that you go through the subsystem. However, that being said, there are you can designate in the subsystem, like you don't want to be called for certain days, you don't want to be called for certain schools, you just want this. But I think, one thing we could do is reach out to HR and see if there's a way that we could do that that's different and maybe a little bit easier. But I do know that it had to do with all the legalities of getting someone, with kids.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, and that does help clarify. There's just two things that I wanted to, if you ask HR or whoever. One is I don't want some money. I just want to volunteer, and I have been cleared to volunteer.
Yep.
And the second thing is sometimes I see clients in the afternoon starting at 1. So I don't remember what the subschedule for half day is, but if it conflicts, then I can't do it. And I'd rather see if there's some flexibility so that we can get parents like myself in to help where there's need.
And you're on the volunteer list, so that kind of, I think, helps with the legality of being around students. So yeah, I think we can certainly look into that.
Yeah, definitely something
Okay.
we can look into and get back with everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody else had a question on what we've heard so far? Okay, Ryan, I'll let you finish up.
Sure, and really just the other updates wanted to share is, as you know, our virtual learning program ended at the semester. I know I spoke with many of our campuses as they held a variety of different ways that they welcomed students back, everything from full on like back to school, almost, events at some of our schools that had a large number of students returning to pretty low key ones. For some of our campuses had just a handful of students who were still in the virtual learning program. We did have some students who withdrew. I think hopefully it's just for a period of time. But I don't want to say that every single student of the 3,000 that were still in virtual when we ended up coming back to their campus. But I'd say at least 90%. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but about that is the number that did return to campus. We're working with the receiving campuses, I guess academically, to keep them connected with some of the teachers that were in the virtual learning program, so they can give feedback and give details to the receiving campuses, especially around some students that may need some extra help after being in the virtual program all fall and all of last year. So overall, I'd say that it's been definitely a transition for some of our students because of the long period of time of them not being on campus, and our counselors and our teachers are working slowly with them to welcome them back. And I think I don't really have much more to share on that other than they're back on campus and they're back with their peers and moving forward. Any questions on the return of our virtual students?
Any questions? No?
I'd like to ask a question. I was told that the district really wants to keep students around, but I was one of those parents who had to withdraw my child because, for one, we have a specials teacher who sees all the students and refuses to wear a mask. That's not what I would consider to be following COVID protocol, and neither does my child's pediatrician. What are you doing to get us back into the district?
I think we can continue to talk about I don't know every case of every teacher, whether or not they're wearing a mask, but I think that we're continuing to work with our campuses on safety protocols and working through everything we need to do there. I think individual situations like that would probably be best to talk about individually on campuses of what are those situations.
Just one quick thing is that just like students have the ability to have the mask, oh, Brandy, remind me what that's called, that form.
The mask exemption form?
Yes, so it's possible that the teacher might have a mask exemption form on file.
I have no doubt, but it still means that she can spread coronavirus to the entire school. And that is one of the reasons that I did not send my child back. If there were a virtual program, I would not have withdrawn her, but that's not there. So I had no choice, and I didn't like it, but I had no choice.
And I know some of these issues are bigger than just Round Rock ISD. And so I'm appreciative that we have administration here hearing out the concerns, and hopefully even on an individual basis, maybe y'all can reach out and figure out what else can be done. But understanding the circumstances of where we're at now, is there any questions about these updates? Anything else from anybody? Okay. Thank you very much for those updates. You know, we were hoping we'd be in a different place by now, but here we are. So we'll continue doing our work. I want to give just kind of an overview for the SHAC work over this semester. As of now, we're still going to continue to be virtual and live stream our SHAC meetings. We have, at the beginning, you all should have gotten that overview of the process. And what we've been wanting to do this semester is really drill down on language for proposals of what we may recommend to the board. Again, things that we come up are just recommendations, and we give them to the board. We do a presentation, and they can take them or not, but it's our job to look thoroughly at what we can do to improve the school health and to make recommendations to the board. That being said, there is a bit of heavy lifting that comes at the tail end to get ready for that presentation. Usually that presentation is done by the chair or vice chair or both. And so in order for us to be prepared to thoroughly have expressed and present the recommendations of this body, we want to make sure that everybody's had time to be very thorough and mindful and intentional with our language. And in past experience, sometimes we get bogged down in the language part of it. So one of the things we wanted to make sure we did early was to actually start looking at the language of the recommendations. You know, a big part of it is getting information. Another part is forming kind of the ideas of what we would like to look at different topics. And then it really is drilling down into the language of what recommendations may look like. And I know there's a little bit of extra work on one of our committees that's going to be a little bit different than just these recommendations. But for generally speaking, what we hope is that we can hear from different committees some of the topics that y'all are thinking about. And then by our next meeting, I'm going to ask that y'all send in just the rough draft of the actual language so people can mull that over. And then our next meeting, which is February 15th, hopefully we all have a copy or a version of each committee's language where we can start helping make sure, one, that if there are any ideas that are from multiple subcommittees, that, you know, we align our efforts, and then two, that we help each other with suggestions, questions, and thoughts. But y'all are going to continue to do some work independently in the breakouts on drilling down. But what I would love to do before we check on old business, new business, and then break out so y'all can keep doing this work is just hear from each committee, kind of just ideas, thoughts. So these are kind of what direction y'all are going in, just making sure that everybody's on the same page and we have an idea of, you know, what each group is thinking about. So I know each group has a lead and a scribe. And so it doesn't matter to me if the lead or the scribe wants to talk, but I would love to just hear kind of the general idea and direction that each committee is going so that we can have some conversation about the committee work. Right, everybody on board? Okay, so let's start with our wellness committee. Who can speak for wellness?
This is Becky Laswell, and I can speak for wellness. Our last meeting was pretty small. It was just Kathy and I, so we haven't had a chance to discuss this with our other members yet, but these are a couple of the ideas that we've had a little bit of discussion around so far this year. And I have text for them. I'm not going to read it, but I am starting to work on that language like you mentioned. The first one was a recommendation that we ask that teachers do not take away recess as a form of discipline. We don't think this happens often, but it's something we wanted to look into a little more. The second is to establish a standard practice regarding food treats for birthdays. And this gets into some parts of state education code and how the practice of how we celebrate birthdays varies widely from classroom to classroom and campus to campus. The third one that we've talked about a lot, that we've talked about in past years as well, are establishing some best practices for school gardens. And this is not hard-hitting news from the Wellness Committee, but it's something that we have seen some campuses wanting more information about. And there's a few other things we've discussed just once or twice on our committee that I think I'll hold for now, but those are the three major ones. Does that sound fair for the other members? Okay, good.
I see nodding.
All right, good, we like it.
All right. So to have a little bit of discussion on the topics, the ideas from wellness, anybody from one of the other committees have any thoughts, questions, suggestions?
This is Cornell. I was just curious, as far as the concerns around food treats and whatnot, is that more in consideration of things like allergies, or really more in making sure that there's not a like massive disparity between, you know, which kid or which schools celebrate big and which ones celebrate small and stuff like that? I was just kind of curious more about what the committee or what the subgroup was wanting to focus on around, you know, on treats and whatnot.
We've talked about a lot of different things, including the very real needs of kids with food allergies. But we also know that it is codified in state law that school districts cannot forbid or prohibit parents or grandparents from providing treats for birthdays. But we see that being carried out in some classrooms. So it's just trying to have an awareness of that, as well as an awareness of some families celebrate, some don't. You know, a lot of my neighbors from their cultural traditions want to bring a homemade treat. And is that allowed? Is that not allowed? Can things be served in the morning or only after school? Can foods be sent home or can they be eaten in class? There's just a lot of weird little things that are especially questions for parents in the early elementary grades. Just kind of thinking about that, how none of this is required. Some people do, some people don't. Just kind of thinking about a lot of different questions.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Kelly, go ahead.
So Becky, thank you for providing more information. I was just curious a little bit more. So are y'all talking about trying to make the policy uniform across the district?
We haven't really talked about in terms of a policy, but more things like best practices, perhaps, so that there could be some consistency, because right now it can be that one first grade class allows something and another in that same building doesn't. And it can lead to a lot of frustration from the families that are involved. And of course, from campus to campus, but we didn't talk about it in the hardcore, like let's codify this in policy, because it's kind of extreme for something like a cupcake, but it does need to reflect the state law as well.
Oh, so I would have thought that it would be, I guess my thought about it is that I wonder if some teachers need to have the flexibility to say, you know, given the dynamics in my classroom, like how certain kids, you know, behavior of certain children or whatever, like it just works better if we do this at this time. Like just
one of the things we did write down was a recommendation that the snacks only be given like at the end of the day, and to let the teacher have that, like, we don't want the messy cupcake in the room and we don't know who can eat these ingredients, and it might make sense to recommend that they go home so parents can choose, but we hadn't talked a lot about a lot of the details, but those are great questions.
Thank you.
We'll go Michael and then Denise.
Thank you. Becky, I just gave you a link to a study I just found in 2018 showing the prevalence of teachers. Of course, this is not just our district, it's I think a national, but there's also a lot of research out there explaining why it's important to have recess. I would just point out that it'd be a good idea to have those studies, the most seminal or maybe the latest, as part of your rationale, because
thank you.
I agree, it's very important, and there was even a law that I don't think it made it out of committee, but they were trying to codify that at the state level.
Thank you for that link. I opened it for you. Thank you.
And then Denise?
This question is not regarding the snack thing. Are we still talking about that? Because I can wait my turn. I just had my ADHD brain just turned on and I thought of something and then I raised my hand, but I can
Well,
wait.
if it's about anything we've already talked about, then go for it.
It's not. It was just something that was brought to my attention recently about, and I don't know who to present this question to, whether it's to the board or the superintendent. It was something I had seen from a middle school recently about a training that took place, and some parents had come to me, you know, being on the SHAC and everything, and they asked, do I know anything about it? And I don't know anything about it, about a teacher training saying do not contact parents about children who might come to their counselors or their staff with gender issues. Do we know anything about that, or what we can tell parents, what the policies are?
So I wrote that down, and we have a section for new business, and we'll ask that again when we get to that section.
Okay,
I wrote
great,
it down
thank you.
so we don't forget.
Okay,
Sure.
yes, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions for the Wellness Committee? Okay. Thank you, guys. Is there anything that y'all need? Any research or data that we can try and get for you?
I wouldn't mind just speaking to someone who understands staff discipline. We've kind of written that down. Looking over my notes, sorry.
Sure.
And that's really about it. Whoever might know like what standards we give to teachers about what discipline options they have, especially in elementary. I don't know who that would be.
Do you know, Ryan?
Yeah, let me think on who the best person might be to set you up with on that. And I'll get back with the group in that committee.
All right.
Get you in touch with somebody.
All right, thank you. Next, let's check in with mental and behavioral health.
Thank you. We did have a very good off-SHAC meeting with a lot of our members, and we actually did a lot of the wording, so I think we're ahead. We settled on 4 main topics that we all felt were really important. The one was just looking at areas of criterion for measurement of success with the mental health services, building off of the report that was presented to us last time. The second was looking at implementing TBSI training, which is the Texas Behavioral Success Initiative. Currently, it's only required for crisis teams, and so it has a lot of really good material. I've been through the training multiple times, and it's free, so it would be a really good initiative. The third is looking at how state special education funds are being allocated in our district. A lot of people don't know that up to 45% can be reallocated to the general fund. And we do feel that through looking at CPAC data, that special education needs are on the rise, and some of that money coming back to those coffers could help in sufficiently funding and staffing the needs for special ed kids. And then the last one was on looking at from the Fordham Institute, there was a really good report on transition services. So looking at creating a initiative in our district to really bring together the different areas at district level to coordinate and provide those kinds of transition services or supports our education, like SPED transition, SEL education, workforce readiness, college readiness, and so forth. And that's it.
Thank you. Questions for mental and behavioral health? right. And y'all are ahead with some language already drafted. Do y'all need anything else that we can make sure you get?
I don't think so at this point. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. There's no questions for mental and behavioral health. We can move to human development and sexuality. And I know y'all have a little bit of a different time frame and trajectory.
Yes, we do. So our committee is primarily, actually, it's the only issue we're working on is adopting a recommendation for a new sex ed health curricula for middle school. And we're doing it for two reasons. One is the curricula that we currently use, the Worth the Wait, is no longer in use. Basically, the developer of that has moved off to her own shop and rebranded that curricula. And then we also have to do this because the legislature redid some of the TEKS rules around the sex ed content in the curriculum. So for those two reasons, we've got to figure out a new curriculum, what we want to do, and get all that situated before the next school year. So we've done a lot of work in putting together and pulling together a lot of information. What we're going to be doing after, and I do apologize to my committee. I know I am feeling very behind because I just barely tested negative for COVID after being knocked out for a week or more.
Oh no.
And my brain is still fuzzy. So I feel very behind, but we are going to be reviewing internally different curricula. We've already got some that we're looking at, and we have the health textbook that the State Board of Education, the only one that they said okay to, basically, that we're looking at. So after we do that, what we're going to do is have some open meetings where parents in the community can also look at those curricula and share their thoughts, and then present to the school board. So we are trying to move as fast as we can, because as Ryan has told us and Amy's told us, it takes a lot once we decide what we're going to do, get the board to approve it. They've got to purchase things. And so we really have to move pretty quickly on that stuff. But we also are very committed to making sure that the process is as transparent as possible to the general public, so people feel like they have an opportunity to speak up and share their concerns and their thoughts on the different curricula.
So let me ask a question. Do you believe that the time frame that we normally have in SHAC for May recommendations to the board, is that aligned with when y'all will be ready to give a recommendation, or is that going to be off and kind of separate?
I think yes, but I know Ryan and Amy wanted us to have it earlier, March, April. So we're actually trying to move faster than the SHAC. I don't know if that's really going to happen, but we're going to do our best.
Yeah, let's not sacrifice transparency or making sure we're doing everything we want to do for speed. But just the reality is that there'll be a lot of districts ordering resources, and the sooner we make a decision and kind of get in line and get purchases done, the more time we have for training teachers and everything next year.
And then do you have ideas about how many of the parent meetings, open meetings that we want to have, and when you want to have those, so we can help you guys with some of that part?
Yes. So what we are planning to do is we want to pick our top 3, right? So we'll have a curricula rubric that we use to kind of come up with our top 3 curricula, and then either have one night where people all come. I think this is going to have to be done virtual though. And I don't know, we probably need to talk more with Ryan about that, but those would be in February where people could comment. And then I think also we can put stuff up on the SHAC website so that people can link to it and kind of review things at their own pace too.
And so we'll have a receptacle to receive comments for whether they go or they come online and see it and then have a comment later, or whether they go look at it online. We know how we'll be able to receive that information, Ryan?
Yeah, we have some ways we can do it. I don't know if the group has talked about certain forms or feedback forms or things like that, but.
We
Other
haven't
similar
yet,
forms.
but yeah,
Sounds like a good idea.
we need to do that for sure.
And then we have Dr. Jennifer Faulkner. You have a question?
I kind of want to understand the bigger picture when new TEKs are passed down from the state. It does sound like they have an approved, set of resources. Why would we not use those? Is it common to, typically in any subject that a lot of curriculum options? Can you kind of comment on that in general so I can understand the process a little bit better?
That is not on me.
Yeah, I can give a stab at that, and then Amy or Laura or anybody else who wants to chime in too. So typically in larger scale adoptions, if it's talking math or science or something like that, there'll be multiple state approved options. Essentially they have a list. In this case, they had one textbook that was on the list, and I don't know if that textbook, I don't know if their intention was that textbook would cover everything that's in the TEKs. I think it covers portions of it. So that's, but it's not atypical either to adopt multiple pieces to cover as like adopted material for the district. So sometimes we have everything from one textbook. Sometimes we have multiple different resources that we purchase.
So Ryan, I do know with the health, the textbook that was adopted was like an entire health textbook. It wasn't just
That's true, yeah.
that component. So we were looking at it from that lens, but there's only one that they adopted. That's the extent of my knowledge of TEKs.
And when they adopt something, it's an option. It's not a thou shalt use this resource.
All right. Anything else, Dr. Jennifer Faulkner? Okay. And Leslie?
Yeah, so on the adoption of those books, I know a lot of it has to do also with the publishers of whenever they were presenting to the Texas Board of Education. So a lot of it has to do with just who the publishers are and when they come through. And that's why only certain ones are selected. But like Ryan was saying, we don't have to go with them. We can still choose another curriculum if we find something that suits us better. So that's it.
Any other questions for human development and sexuality? So Dr. Faulkner, anything else that you need from us? Anything else that we can do?
No, we've got a great team that we pulled in from the district to help us with this. So I think it's just a matter of us getting the work done. When we do have those parent forums, I think everybody's spreading that info as wide as you can to your networks, because sometimes, there's 10,000 emails we get from schools these days. So if we can make sure we let our friends and family know that, hey, this is important, that would be helpful. But otherwise, I think we got what we need.
All right. Well, that does sound like an important rule for us once we do have those input forms, that we make sure that they get spread to all of the parents and interested individuals who need to give feedback. All right. So then old business, was there any old business that we needed to talk about? I did want to say that our bylaws and they are posted on our web page, where the district does have that either in May or June that we elect new officers. And so if you think you may be interested, I would say start looking at that. Our positions are chair, vice chair, and secretary, because I would like for us in February to at least start getting an idea of who's interested so that we can prepare for that election. We don't have a set meeting in May, but we likely need to meet to do that election, but also usually a meeting before we do a presentation to the board just to make sure all the information is up to date. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. Any questions about that? Okay. And then for new business, we can start with the question that came up earlier about a training for teachers related to kids who go to their counselor or staff related to gender issues. Ryan, are you aware of this training that was brought up?
Yeah, I believe I'm aware of that particular training that happened. I think I can say that in working with the area superintendent and the principal on the campus, they visited with the teams that were providing that training. I think that I believe the response is not everything in that particular presentation aligned with everything that as a district we would put forth. And I think it's been addressed at that level.
Okay. And Michael, I see you have your hand up. Is it related to this, or do you have a different new business?
Different new business.
Okay, let me hang tight with you. Did anybody have additional comment or question, Leslie?
I did. So regarding that training then, because in our last 2019-2021 SHAC recommendations, we did vote on the trainings that would be mandatory for new staff and teachers. Have those been implemented? Those would have been brought to the board in this past May, right?
The recommendation for
the recommendations,
trainings.
yeah. So the recommendations all went to the board in past May. I can say that hasn't come back to us as from the board as a directive to do anything with that particular recommendation. So I don't think this is connected to that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments related to this new business item? Okay, so Michael, you've got another piece of new business?
Yes, I don't know if this is really new business, but we had a discussion in our subcommittee about parents and community members and faculty being able to contact us directly so that we could just get feedback from the public at large, I guess. My point being is, I know that we discovered that there is a SHAC email. We discussed wanting to use that email and publicize it so that people know that they can email us, and at least having not only the executive committee, but also the subcommittee chairs be able to access that to see any information that might be there.
And so on our webpage, there is almost to the very bottom, right before the bylaws, it says email the SHAC with any comments, recommendations, or concerns. That will populate an email with the SHAC email address. But my question is, Ryan, who receives it and how do y'all distribute it to the SHAC?
So that's a great question. So I believe that I thought it was forwarded to the chair. Do you not get any of those? I can look at them. I know Angie, my executive assistant, has access. So I don't know if any email has come into it. I think that's not really used. We could promote it more as a way to get feedback. Maybe make it a button. I can make it a button rather than just a link. That might.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Attention. Yeah.
Is there any way that we can distribute that among some of the people in the SHAC, or?
I guess can you figure out who gets that?
Yeah, I don't think there's been any emails to it. So I think it does forward to me and you, and we haven't gotten any. But once we do, we have other email addresses that we do something similar where we can take the email and essentially put it on a spreadsheet, and then anybody can see the content of the email. So I think that's something once, like I said, most of us are teaching classes this week and next week. But that's something we can definitely do once we have a moment to put that in place. And we can promote it more as like more of a feedback button than just an email address.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other new business? All right. Well, I don't have anything else that we need to talk about. I know that committees still want to visit, and we've spent about an hour in the general SHAC meeting. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn the regular SHAC meeting so y'all can go to breakouts.
I move to adjourn to go to breakouts.
A second.
I'll second that.
All right, and all in favor to adjourn and go into breakouts, please wave or say aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, hearing none opposed, we'll go ahead and adjourn the SHAC meeting. Thank you for joining us. We'll stop the live stream and we will